Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it. We have Cherish Cronmiller, who is the Executive Director of the Olympic Community Action Program. Every county in the state has what they refer to as a CAP, and ours is Oly Cap. And Oly Cap covers both Clallam County and Jefferson County. Cherish has been on with Oly Cap for is it about 2 years or a little less, maybe?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. And she is also an attorney and very well versed in all things community action programs. I think she came from Ohio, if I recall. Yes. And so we're really lucky to have her at the helm of Oly Cap, helping those citizens that are at the lower end of the socioeconomic ladder. And so she is an expert in all these spaces as far as resources that are available and also the demand that that Oly Cap and other organizations are seeing across our counties. I'd love to focus today on Clallam County if we can, but I don't know that you have that segregated out. And as always, please put yourself on mute and we'll let Cherish take it. And if you have any questions, either raise your hand or put your question or name in the chat and we'll call on you for you to ask your question. So with that, thank you very much, Cherish. We really appreciate you doing this. I know mornings are not your favorite time, so this was an extra sacrifice that she did for us. So thank you, thank you.
It's my pleasure. So everyone should be able to see on their screen the Oly Cap sort of logo and information there. And so I'm going to go through, I have a lot of information about Oly Cap, and I'm going to sort of whip through some of that information just so you have a, sort of a broad understanding, but make sure that we're focusing today on some of the questions you have regarding, this rent assistance, the new laws regarding, the evictions and landlord tenant issues in the state of Washington, and what Oly Cap is here to do to help. And so please know that I always do avail myself, usually not early in the mornings, but if I have to, I will. So if your organization or entity is interested in hearing more about the agency or programs we have, please let me know. I'm always happy to come run my mouth to talk about the agencies. So as Colleen mentioned, community action agencies started back in 1964, and there's over 1,000 across the country, serving more than 99% of the population. And Washington State has 30 community action agencies, and you can see us up there on the peninsula covering Clallam and Jefferson counties. And ours was formed in 1966. And then in 2000, it was Community Action Council. It was Clallam Jefferson Community Action Council, which is a handful. And in 2000, they renamed it to Olympic Community Action Programs, which was an initiative by one of we have a national organization to try and get everyone to utilize that term community action, right? Because all the people were getting assistance and they're like, oh, is your cap the same as that type of cap? And so in Washington, there are some public caps, meaning they're affiliated with the county government typically, sometimes with the city, but most likely with the county. Our cap is a private nonprofit 501c3 corporation, and a number of them are. That really helps with flexibility and trying to provide for needs in the community very rapidly. See, our mission there is to help build resilient communities. Equitable access to solutions and opportunities is important to us, and what we value there, and that's available on our website as well. Oly Caps are unique in that they have a tripartite board, meaning 1/3 has to be elected officials or their appointees, 1/3 is private citizens or business owners, and 1/3 is low-income individuals themselves or people who have been democratically elected by low-income individuals to represent their needs. So that's very crucial to the makeup of our board. And again, set by federal mandate based on the community services block grant that we receive. Last year, Oly Cap had about $11 million. Our audited financials are available at our website, our 990, and you're welcome to review that. At any given time, we have more than 50 programs running at the office, utilizing 130 different funding streams. All of that has to be coded and is very specific. You see a majority of our money there, especially last year. Early childhood, because we run Head Start and early childhood services throughout the peninsula, working with 5 different school districts. Housing, which we are the lead agency in Jefferson County, but not in Clallam. The lead agency in Clallam County is Serenity House, but I'm still going to cover, what assistance is available, and it will apply to what Serenity House is doing as well. And then energy assistance. That's utility assistance that we provide directly, typically to the PUDs, or if we have to buy wood for someone, or a couple remaining fuel oils that are left around. And then our food and nutrition. We supply the food across the peninsula to the food banks. We operate the actual food bank per se, and the food banks are actually pantries, right? And we provide to the tribes and all the pantries across the peninsula. So what you may not know is we have things like home care services. We have home health care aides. We have a special adult program with memory care, and all this is available on our website. And I'm going to make this PowerPoint available as well. So please don't be like, oh my God, she's whipping through this stuff. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and really to get to the meat of, why I think some of you are here. So, we have the Home Fund with the Peninsula Daily News, which we are so grateful for because it's one of our few unencumbered funds. When I say that, most of our funds are federal and state funds. And so we have a lot of paperwork, audits, monitoring. People are like, why does Oly Cap want all this stuff? It's not us that wants it. It's usually the feds through the state of commerce that has to rely on that information. So when we get donations, they're really helpful to us to be able to help people in crisis who may not be able to provide the paperwork to prove their situation, or may not be able to show us their income information to prove some of this stuff. So that's where these donations are so incredible in helping us. Last year, a lot went to rent assistance before some of the other programs ramped up, right? Before some of the moratoriums came into place and things like that. We were helping people sustain very early on in the crisis. And that was thanks to the people giving donations to Peninsula Daily News. And we were doing that, across Clallam and Jefferson counties. I mentioned energy assistance. We have a number of different programs in Clallam County, including Ratepayer, Pass the Buck, and then our LIHEAP program, which is now operating year-round to help individuals with utility assistance. I always tell people, if you applied for something before, don't be afraid to look at our website or apply again. Those standards are always changing. God love the feds and the state commerce. They always love to be changing something on us. And so, we always tell folks, whatever you do, communicate. Okay. A lot of the moratoriums, are going to end at the end. Well, they ended at the beginning of August 1st, but that doesn't mean that the PUDs started switching people off, right? Their websites detail what is available. So you can see we've processed over 2,000 applications across Jefferson and Clallam counties in the last 12 months and paid out close to $1 million to energy assistance providers in the last year. So there's Jefferson. This is Clallam's PUD website. So if you go there, you can see they've got a budget payment plan, assistance, and then note if you need help. And we're usually the top agency they're going to send you to because we have like the largest dollar amount. We've got a special program with Clallam right now that's adding extra assistance to that. So please, I always encourage folks, even, people may be struggling to make that bill happen, don't do that to yourself, right? Encourage folks to utilize this resource and save the money for something else that there aren't assistance items for, right? And so, same with, when it comes to using the food banks, I tell people, yeah, you might be able to make your grocery bill this year or this month, but why do that? Go to the food banks. We've got fresh fruits and vegetables. Save that money for a rainy day or for something we can't help you with in a crisis. The agency operates the community centers in Jefferson County. I mentioned early childhood services. We provide this wonderful program, and we are still accepting enrollments for this coming year. We have wonderful volunteers of the parents in our programs, but it's much more than just, classroom time, right? We get medical and dental care. We give parenting education. We do home visits. We're really involved in trying to help early on. And there you can see our various locations in, Mount Angeles, and Clallam-based and Head Start and Forks. We do have an employment and training program with Work First. And so if you know people that are seeking employment and they need help, DSHS refers people to us, but we also do placements of those folks. So if you are potentially looking to have, somebody work at your agency and participate in this program, we'd love for you to reach out to our staff members, and that's available on our website. And you can get tied up with that program to accept people who are trying to get back into the job force and understand what it's like to have a regular job, right? We have volunteer opportunities with AmeriCorps, or what's now known as Senior AmeriCorps. It used to be called the RSVP program. So plenty of opportunities there, and you can see where all those folks throughout the peninsula volunteer all of their time. We do have senior nutrition available across the peninsula. So we deliver home, most people remember them being called as Meals on Wheels, right? We do that program. And we also have lunch locations that hopefully, cross our fingers, will be starting back up. In Port Angeles, we did that at the senior centers. That meal is still being offered to go only at this time. I mentioned our big warehouse and food distribution. Again, lots of stuff that we do there. Fresh fruits and vegetables, coordinating, but we do over 1 million pounds of food. So really, what we're here to talk about, right, is the more than $1 million that we have provided thus far in rental assistance. Now, our agency has different pots of money, and it's very hard to keep them all straight. Right. So here's a list of just some of our housing programs, right? And you'll see some of them are specific to the county or prioritized by a certain county. But if you see that, Jefferson County only, we have that, usually means Serenity House has that, and Clallam is the lead agency. Okay. So Clallam has some of these funds available as well, because these are usually funds, again, that are federal or state. They pass through Commerce at State of Washington onto the lead agencies. And so that's our agency in Jefferson and Serenity House in Clallam. So our agency operates a bunch of housing. A lot of it is in Jefferson, but we're doing more in Sequim, and obviously doing a lot with respect to some of the COVID money that's coming through. So these are some of our Jefferson County programs. Down there, Clallam, we do have the Home Fund and a COVID Relief Fund. We have a Sequim program. And we have our veterans program, where we're helping veterans across Clallam County as well. So those are some of the major programs, and we'll be looking at a little bit more into those. And then, we do the veterans outreach and the Sequim Health and Housing Collaborative, which is a part of Clallam, but they're with the city of Sequim. So coordinated entry is what we work on, throughout the peninsula. So always doing our best to make that happen. These are some of the various properties that our agency manages or oversees. The only thing that we have in Clallam is the warming center. So the eviction moratorium and eviction prevention. So what we tell people, first is we want you to look at Housing Solutions Network is a entity in Jefferson County, but they really are providing great information, that's useful, I think, really across the county. And with them, we put together this flyer. It's available for download on their website too. And so there are resources to help people stay housed. And the number one thing, right, is to make sure that you're reaching out to either our agency or Serenity House. And I'll show you what our website has with the forms and things like that in a moment. But you can see there, applications are available, and that you have to be at 80% area median income. We have some of that data on our website, but really, if you've been affected by COVID and there's any nexus to COVID that you can make showing a decrease in income, we're going to be able to find you rental assistance. That's really the state issued something called TRAP, which is Tenant Rental Assistance Program. And they did a TRAP 1.0, and that's the one that has some more documentation requirements. We are in the process of rolling out TRAP 2.0, and that one is asking for a little less documentation, and I think it's going to be easier for us to get out the door. There are millions of dollars left in this program, okay? There's millions of dollars of rental assistance available on the peninsula. We are not in any jeopardy of running out of this money anytime soon, okay? And I'll explain why here in a minute. So Housing Solutions Network, again, links you to our webpage, gives some information about Northwest Justice Project, the Clallam Jefferson Pro Bono Lawyers, and the Dispute Resolution Centers. So with TRAP, again, all these metrics, right, are very confusing when you see these like 50% AMIs, right, which is area median income, or income based on a person versus the household. Don't try and wrap your head around all of that. The best thing to do is if you go to, so this is our website, you see the web address olycap.org/housing services, and we've got some drop-down menus to direct you there. We have all of our documents for print in Spanish and English. And when we're working with customers or our partners, we ask that people try and help individuals fill out these various forms, because these are the forms that we need at this time in order to process information. And that's literally all we need is like all those forms completed, and then we can start issuing. Now, where are you running into problems, Cherish? Well, here are some of the issues. We have some landlords that have been operating under the table, meaning they're not reporting their income. They're not reporting that they have a rental. And so subsequently, they don't want to fill out a W-9 because our agency never pays to customers directly. We always pay to third-party vendors, okay? That's who we pay to, who the bill is owed to, right? We never hand customers money. That's not what we do at our agency. So subsequently, we need the landlord to fill out a W-9 so that we can put them as a vendor into our system, right? And our fiscal staff is issuing more than $1 million a month out of our fiscal department. So it's important to get into our vendor, and we have to be able to issue a check. But again, some of these landlords are reticent to want to get on the radar that, they've got a rent agreement and that they are earning income as a landlord to some degree, right? Even if that's supplementing their life, there's ways to show that, right? And they just haven't done that due diligence. The other thing is that we do have, especially with low income folks, a number of people who don't have a written rental agreement. And that's a problem as well, right? Most of these programs are going to ask to see something in writing that there's some type of landlord-tenant agreement here. And either some folks have been living there so long, the lease they had was from years ago and nobody can find a copy, or, they've just made an oral contract. And so then we have to set about trying to work with that issue and get the right documentation that we need. Landlords can complete this information on behalf of their tenants. So if you have a tenant dragging their feet on this matter, you can fill out this paperwork to the best of your ability or provide the documentation we need. And we're going to do our best to issue that assistance, as long as we can prove there are actually people living there, right? So that's important because, 3 years from now, the feds or state will come knocking at our door to see these files and critique them. So that's why it's so important. So we have web address available there, and all of those forms available. We also have drop boxes available in front of both of our offices. Now, again, TRAP, we are the entity supplying that in Jefferson County, but Serenity House has this program, right? So same forms, same information. If you go to their website, that's available there. Why is that important? It's important because of the bridge proclamation currently in place here in the state of Washington. Okay, so instead of extending the state eviction moratorium, instead, this bridge proclamation was made going from July 1 until September 30th. So what it means is that, yes, a landlord can start the eviction process. However, they can only do so if, they have offered some type of repayment plan, you've been given written notice, you've been given the opportunity to respond, and all of the both Clallam and Jefferson County right now have the rental assistance programs operational and have the court programs sort of up and running. We have a working group of some of the court administrators, Clallam Jefferson Pro Bono, Northwest Justice Project, us, Serenity, Peninsula Mediation. So all of them are working because what we're hoping for is to head things off at the pass. Our hope is that we will avoid potentially having folks have a public record of a potential eviction on their record, right? That really affects people's credit scores and ability to re-rent if they show that they had an eviction or an eviction was filed at one time on their behalf. And so what this program does is it sort of issues a stay. Somebody, contacts the court, right? They want to do an eviction. The court is going to sort of walk them through like, okay, why are you evicting this person? Have you attempted repayment? Have you attempted mediation? What is going on there? And then you're going to potentially be referred back to Peninsula Mediation, and tenants will likely be referred to Northwest Justice Project for legal counsel, because tenants have a right to have legal counsel in these issues where they are facing eviction and loss of their housing. And, each of the courts is now sort of setting up these documents, it's a set of them explaining where they can get rental assistance, how they can mediate their dispute. The Attorney General's office has sample repayment plans up on their website. So all of that sort of has to be done. By the same token, tenants can't just ignore what's going on, right? If they owe back rent, they have to start to work towards and make an effort that they are either going to try to enter into a repayment plan, get rental assistance, or you come to an agreement as to when and if that tenant is going to move out, right? If they're going to acquiesce to that. By the same token, if you're a landlord and you're like, oh, I'm ready to increase the rent, that rent amount has to be reasonable. And it's a vague term that is going to have to be sort of parsed out by the law. And, reasonableness can mean different things in different places. And so that's going to be something to think about with respect to increases if you're considering that. Let me stop there. Yeah.
Can you provide an example of where there might be a disagreement over reasonableness?
Sure. So let's say, a landlord's been renting a place for $1,000 a month, for the past 5 years, right? That's what they've been charging this tenant. And now they've been looking around at rent prices and they say, hey, I realize I could easily get $1,500 a month for this place. Maybe even $1,800, right? But definitely $1,500 based on what I see my other, landlords doing and the ads I see on Craigslist or Nextdoor or Facebook. So I think, I should jump the rent amount to that. So it's going to be a dispute as to, is a $500 jump in the rent amount reasonable, especially in light potentially of what that tenant can afford, how long the tenant has been living there under that amount. Does your lease agreement say anything about rental increases, right, in between rent terms? Certainly, when you're not in the middle of a rent agreement, can you increase the amount? But at the end, the lease has ended, right? You want to start a new lease, and now you're saying the rent amount is $1,500. Is that reasonable in light of circumstances? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is it correct that my recollection is that a residential lease can only be 1 year unless it's notarized and both parties agree that it could be longer? You can lock in a different longer term. Is that right?
Oh, not to my knowledge. No.
Okay.
I'll have to look that up.
I think it is just 1 year normally, right? A residential lease is only 1 year.
Well, typically, yeah, they run 1 year, but they often can have an auto renewal on them to auto renewal, month to month or for another year. Certainly commercial leases, are usually running 5 or 10 years, right? But for the residential lease, I'd have to look up RCW 59. I've only been here 1.5 years, and I got my law license back in March, and I can tell you Ohio Revised Code 5321, which is a landlord-tenant law, like the back of my hand, but still learning about Washington. And not only that, but this year, so many different things passed with respect to Washington landlord-tenant law. And I think some of the courts, landlords, and tenants got very confused by the moratorium, right? The moratorium had some very strict set of guidelines with respect to what was allowed in eviction and who they considered to be a tenant, right? Whether or not they had a lease agreement, whether they were just squatting, all sorts of stuff. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time to flesh out, like, okay, what does all of this mean now with respect to right to have legal counsel, right to enter into, mediation or repayment plans, all of these types of things that are being considered now. Some of that we won't know until sort of case law fleshes it out. And so I think that, Washington Law Help, which is a part of the Northwest Justice Project, does a great job and has a wonderful website that really details good information, I think, for landlords and tenants about, what some of the laws are and explaining those in very easy to understand ways, right? And so I definitely recommend them as a resource.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to know about, so if a landlord has a tenant that is behind on rent, they can approach, it would be Serenity House for their TRAP program.
Correct.
On behalf of the tenant. But if the tenant isn't at 80% area median income or lower, then they wouldn't qualify for the funds that would be applied to the landlord. Is that right?
Potentially.
If they won't
Potentially.
work with Serenity House to show their income, then
That could be a problem, but TRAP 2.0 is going to be a little different in being able, if the landlord can show their lack of payment or any information they've obtained that way, or if the landlord themselves has had a reduction in income and can show that as a result of COVID as well, so that they've had an impact too.
Okay.
And so, and there's other funds available, right? So just because they don't fall into TRAP, there might be another set of funds available for them, because our program operates, between the home fund, we have CDBG money in Jefferson, which is development block grant money that I applied for through the county to have subsistence payments to help with mortgages. And so looking at what Serenity House has available and, just understanding that you potentially need to be patient with that process. There's thousands of people making, application, but the more you can get your documents in order, the better off you're going to be.
So we're of course interested in Clallam County, and how would you characterize the demand for the different utility relief and rent relief in Clallam County?
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely high. We get phone calls, all the time, and we help, individuals process their paperwork as best we can. We work in partnership with some of the other organizations that if we can help supplement, certain amounts, we certainly do that a lot. Utility assistance, big piece of that. TRAP does offer some extra utility assistance in there. There's rapid rehousing money. So the benefit in Clallam is that, you periodically do have a vacancy or an opening. And when that's the case, we can rapidly rehouse folks. That money is available for rapid rehousing by helping individuals with deposits, with utility deposits, any of those things that need to happen. Especially as we're going to start to see some of these evictions process, or people want to just avoid, right? I mean, that's the unfortunate thing of individuals whose lives are often in crisis. They're accustomed to just having to move on. And sometimes it's easier to not deal with the problem and to just move on. And so, I don't know that we're going to see a lot of what I call hard evictions, meaning the court, issues the writ of restitution. They're going to come and seize the property and move folks out. I don't know that we're going to see a lot of that, because I think that hopefully, there'll be a lot of repayment agreements in place. But I also think that some tenants will sort of throw up their hands and walk away. They'll come to an agreement with the landlord, like, okay, I'm going to be out by the end of next month. I'm still going to apply for assistance. I mean, we've issued assistance to landlords and found out that, by the time our check cut to that landlord and that assistance was paid, that person no longer lives there anyways, but we're paying back rent amounts. So it doesn't matter that the person doesn't live there anymore. So there's a lot to it. And like I said, they're constantly changing. So making that application, having those forms, checking their website is really crucial. To making sure that you're getting the assistance that you potentially can qualify for.
So I've got two questions, and then we'll go to the questions in the chat.
Sure.
First of all, you mentioned that you guys are issuing checks or distributing amounts of about $1 million a month.
Correct.
And so is that, how would you characterize that distribution from Clallam County to Jefferson County? We have 70%, more than 70% of the total population. Would you estimate 70% of that support is going to Clallam County residents?
No, because of the disparity in the rent assistance. A majority of money going out the door right now is for rental assistance. And because we're the lead in Jefferson for that, now when it comes to things like some of the utility assistance or some of our other unencumbered funds, a majority of those funds, are definitely going to Clallam, because of the higher population amount. And we see pretty equally based on population, the utility assistance, things like that. We have the new Clallam utility assistance program. And so that's been advertised and people received inserts in their bills. So we've seen an increase in calls with respect to some of those monies that are available. But when it comes to rental assistance, because we're not the lead agency in Clallam, no. So I would say, typically, yeah, it's about, maybe 400,000 of that is going out to Clallam right now. Whereas usually, it just depends. I mean, it's because we run so many different rental assistance programs and we manage so many properties in Jefferson, you're always going to have that imbalance of distribution. But when it comes to utilities, our home fund, all of those things, they're pretty equally divided by population amounts.
So my second question is, with the CARES Act funds that were due to be spent, I think it was by the end of the year, but then I believe there may have been an extension allowed for TRAP. Were all of those funds distributed and spent, or were there still remaining funds in any of the programs that were funded through the federal program?
So through the federal program, that federal program went to the state, and a lot of those were actually dispersed to the counties, not necessarily to nonprofits, right? And so the counties were pretty smart usually about how they handled that money. What they did is often the easiest thing to do was to pay their payroll from the CARES Act money that was attended to COVID. And then what that allowed them to do was to free up some of their other funds, their general funds, to go towards those programs so that they had a longer timeline to spend them out. And so, both Jefferson and did a little bit of that. And there certainly is, money still available now in programs that you're going to continue to see sort of come forth as a result of how they managed that money, and either put it into different coffers or paid for some things so that they could free up money elsewhere to have these programs down the road. I know in Clallam, yeah, you're going to start to see, because Commerce is also issuing a lot of different funds available for buying places and turning them into affordable housing of some level, right? Everything from sheltering the unsheltered to affordable workforce housing, right? To RV parks. We're going to see a lot of different things happening, and part of that will come from CARES Act dollars that, may not be specifically that fund, but somehow the county only has the available funding as a result of having had the CARES Act funding to pay for other things, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of dollars are fungible. You can, put it into different buckets, and then that frees up more flexible dollars. I had been told, though, that Oly Cap wasn't able to spend all the money that Oly Cap received directly from the state, and you had to turn in a couple $100,000. Is that accurate? That was in a meeting with the cities when we were discussing CDBG money. That just because CDBG funds are so difficult to distribute, where you have to check that the entity that's getting the money is prove that their household income is 80% below area median income, and that just that funds were sent back. Or was it that maybe it was that they hadn't been spent and they were able to be used later?
That doesn't ring a bell for me. We spent out all of our CDBG funds that we get, through Jefferson and City of Port Townsend. So yeah, we've spent all of our dollars there, and we spend out all of our CSBG funds. We spend out all of the COVID funds that we got for housing the unsheltered. So it's very rare for us to quote unquote turn back money. It might be that we've got some holdover of some of that. But no, we even got special money through Jefferson through some of their CARES Act dollars. And we used all of that money as well. So yeah.
Very good. All right. So, and where would you say is your biggest demand area? Is it in rental assistance? Is it in utilities? Is it in, what's the biggest request you see?
Definitely, rental assistance is a huge one. But we also, something that's unique is car repairs. This is something that I'm often talking about and I see as a big issue. One, because we're in a rural area, but also because as people can, understand, cars have changed dramatically over the last, 40, 50 years, right? You used to be able to tinker with cars, buy parts, put them in, Now everything is sensors and electronics, and you start to mess around with that car and you're lucky to get out of, a dealership or a car mechanic for $1,000 or $500. And what we've seen now for decades is people being what's known as asset poor, right? They cannot survive for more than, one paycheck beyond if they have some type of crises. And so when people have a large expenditure come up in their lives, they're struggling to, fix that and make something happen. So I'd say, car repairs is one of those things that's tedious because that's where we have to use some of the home funds for, right? We don't have any other program that allows for that. And then rental assistance when they don't fit a box. Some people during COVID, their income changes were for a lot of reasons, and not all of them. It's very sometimes hard to prove it was like COVID related per se, right? Like, okay, so this person in the household got a job, but I had to stay home to watch all the kids. And, so explaining that, and sometimes, yeah, we're not dealing with highly sophisticated individuals, right? So we're trying to help them with that narrative of, okay, explain to me what went down. Like, why did you stop working? Or why did your company tell you not to report to work anymore? Or, trying to understand those things. And that's where it can be tedious. The legislators and policymakers that put forth, some of these monies, they mean well, and they want to ensure that people are not being underhanded in the way that they're trying to get assistance. But in doing so, it sometimes is very tedious for our customers to be able to accurately articulate what's going on, because their lives are constantly in crisis. It's like, this person died, this person's in the hospital, I'm taking care of this person's kids, my car broke down, apparently I need another tire here. My workplace says I have to have, this uniform, or, all these things that, can come up and be a barrier. So, hopefully we're going to see some of the folks that maybe applied early on for rental assistance, didn't qualify under one of those pots, and we're asking them to reapply. Same thing with utility assistance. I tell folks, even if you were denied before, look at the criteria again, look at some of the other funds that are available, and you may very well qualify for us to be able to assist. Same with our weatherization program. Our weatherization helps with energy efficiency of a home. We currently have a wait list right now, but it is important, to make those repairs, and we do that for homeowners and for renters. So that program is important, and we are rolling out a new home loan repair program to try and help folks who maybe do have some equity in the home be able to make some of the necessary repairs to keep that property viable. So there'll be more information about that on our website.
That's great. Sounds like a great program. So
I'm looking at some direct questions people have for me here.
yeah, so you meant one was from me that I'll pass on that one. You work with 5 school districts, you said, in the 2 counties. I know in Clallam County, we have 5 school districts. Can you share which ones you work with and which ones you don't in Clallam?
Sure. Let me go back to that slide so I make sure I'm not early childhood. Let's see. So Mount Angeles View Head Start and Early Childhood Education Assistance Program in Port Angeles, Mount Angeles View, and then Clallam home-based Early Head Start covers Clallam County, Port Angeles Head Start in West Port Angeles, and Forks Elementary School. I was trying to see the actual list. So those are our various locations.
Okay, great.
But if you go to our website, you can see the forms, and for sign up, Nick Kukru is our staff member who handles that, and wonderful program. If you've got kids under 5 and you want to get them ready for kindergarten, I can't recommend, Head Start Early Childhood Services enough. We provide meals to the kids. And so right on our website is the various locations. So we have Squim Head Start, Mount Angeles View on Francis Street, Clallam home-based, Port Angeles and Forks. And so
I believe they're all maxed out though. We've done the child care study, and that was one of the outcomes, is that there are no openings. But yeah, it is known as a great program.
We do have some openings still right now. COVID has affected and people moving around and not knowing what they're doing. So I certainly say, make sure that you're reaching out to us if you're interested.
We did a point in time count survey of all the different providers. And at that point, I think it was the end of June, there were no openings with Head Start. But yeah, I'm sure
and we also keep a waiting list.
Yep.
Yeah.
So so there was a question from Kay, and she's got spotty reception. So she asked me to ask her question for her. What help is there for homeless high school students?
Oh, interesting. In Clallam County.
Yes.
So there are some youth programs around to be able to assist kids. I know because we run some of the youth programs in Jefferson County. There are programs specific to youths are considered 12 to 17, young adults 18 to 24. And so Serenity House has a drop-in center. And if you go to their website, they actually have under programs, you can go to youth services, and they sort of list out what they have available with their program and their drop-in program for youths to go there. And I think that's at First United Methodist Church is where their drop-in center is for kids.
Great, thank you. Lena, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. I am a local accountant, and I have been promoting these programs as much as I can because a lot of the employers that I work with have employees that aren't able to pay their rent, or tenants, landlords that have tenants that aren't paying, and so or even business owners that are unable to make their mortgage payment. And having the application process simple is better, because a lot of the people that I work with don't want to go jump through a lot of hoops. But one of the concerns is that so many of my employers are unable to find employees, and I wonder how the housing assistance is affecting that. And one of my concerns as these moratoriums get extended is that it's going to discourage employees, discourage people to go back to work because they're getting all of this assistance. So my question is there a part of the process that when you're identifying how they, what qualifications they have or how they got to need assistance, is part of that process determining whether they quit their job, if there's nothing available, no other jobs for them to work, go to, or if they were laid off? How is that consideration made? I guess that's what my question is.
Well, I mean, you have to think of it in terms of also making the landlord whole, right? So it's not so much about worrying about what the tenant is getting. The money's being paid to the landlord. And we want to ensure that because a number of the landlords, across the peninsula only own, sometimes just one property, only sometimes just a couple, or, somebody's already on subsidized rent. We want to be sure that those individuals are made as whole as possible and are receiving those funds. So it's not necessarily making things any better per se for the tenant, because if they're not paying and they can't continue to pay, then they're going to be out. They have to be able to show that that's, they're going to be able to withstand their repayment plan. If they're going to work out a repayment plan with their landlord. Like I said, otherwise, my guess is some of them are just going to move out and move on, right? And I think that's where we will start to see things come to a bit of a head. And we've already seen, individuals, how are they entering into those repayment plans? What are they considering as income to be able to make that happen? And so as far as, jobs and income, people, are always encouraged. And if they're getting SNAP benefits and other things, they have to show, a certain number of either work hours, donated hours, or what they're doing for their search. The problem that we're running into is that it's a transportation and a childcare issue more than anything for the people that we serve. So the amounts that people can make potentially at a job they quote unquote qualify for does not compensate them enough to the degree that they can afford the childcare necessary to be able to work that job and or find transportation, pay for the fuel or get a car to have those means to be able to get to and from that job. So, we have transportation on the West End that helps folks. I mean, we have a volunteer who drives a van or staff that drive a van and literally take people to work locations to try to help with these types of things. So, I mean, a lot of the folks that, we see, work individual type jobs or cash-based type jobs, bartering type jobs, right? They do, landscaping or childcare or, or they're bartending under the table, you see all sorts of things. And so that's where some of those folks aren't even going to qualify because they don't even follow through on the paperwork. And so that's where we're just going to try and help the landlord out as best possible and see to it that those dollars, I mean, Serenity House got something like 4.6 million in TRAP funds based on the population here. So we want that money to stay in the county, right? And we want that to go to the landlords and business owners who need it and need to be made as whole as possible in our communities. That's only going to sustain, and usually we're paying back rent amounts. We're not usually paying future rent amounts. There are a couple of programs we have that pay future rent amounts, but they never pay more than 3 months. And that's not going to last. And we only pay that front amount if the back amount's already paid for. So we're always paying the back amount first, right? And yeah, that's not going to sustain folks. So,
and so is the maximum benefit 3 months worth of rent, or can they get more? Because I do have some people that I work with that did get some, like for mortgage assistance or whatever. And so can they go back and request more? And is the mortgage assistance through Oly Cap, or is that through the TRAP program at Serenity House for Clallam County?
And any of those mortgage programs would be with the lead agency, so they'd be with Serenity House. We have some mortgage assistance because we took CDBG dollars in Jefferson County for that. I also know that the city of Port Angeles has some assistance directly available there. So I always encourage folks, if you're living with one of the city, in the city propers, check with the city, to make sure what they have and you've garnered everything you can from them. And then check with the county too, to see if they're offering anything additional. And so as far as, yeah, it's actually a maximum of 12 months of assistance, but you have to, there's calculations made. So not everyone is going to hit that full 12-month amount, and only up to 3 months of future rent. Based on the arrears that have already been paid out and the agreement potentially set forth with the landlord. So I think with TRAP 2.0, I'm hoping, and again, every day we get new information. I'm hoping some of the mortgage, assistance is going to be a little different maybe for some of the landlords, because that's how some landlords were paying their mortgages, right? Was from the rent assistance from their rental property. And so, how do we make a showing for that? How COVID has affected those individuals and get them assistance on top of it too.
Great. So Debbie had a question. Let's see, Debbie.
And you were talking about, people not having any reserve cash, for an emergency. What kind of financial training are we offering these families in order to take some of that stress out of their life by having a little bit of an emergency fund?
Before coming here, I worked for a cap agency for 10 years. And, I started on a path of trying to have a number of different financial education programs. And I'll tell you that, some of those programs are with a mixed success in those financial literacy type of things. And there are some nonprofits. I think Lutheran Community Services in Clallam offers financial assistance programs to try to help people better understand a budget, right? But for people who they grew up in crisis, right, and they've lived their lives in crisis, they pay them, the mindset is very different, right? And learning how to unlearn some of those habits of, well, I wait until the very last minute until this is going to be cut off or is a crisis. And then I figure out a way to pay that. And as soon as I have some money, I spend it because it can be taken away from me. I say this, as a justice advocate, as an attorney, some of the laws and things that we've put in place in our society have done us a disservice because a lot of low-income individuals are unbanked, meaning they don't have bank accounts. And the reason for that is because some of their bank accounts are being garnished for one reason or another: child support, back taxes, other types of issues. So that disincentivizes them to utilize bank accounts and really learn how to make payments and pay off things and save money. So I would love, so I had started with a program that's through the AHA network, and it's called Getting By in a Just Getting By World. I started that up at the last agency. We got about 2 years in. We're having some pretty good success with it because what it does is it gives people the opportunity not just to learn the numbers, where I feel like some financial literacy things sort of fall short is it really teaches them to think about their lives in a bigger picture overall, and about their goals and what they wanted for their lives and the lives of their children, right? And is this how you expected your life to be? Is this what you wanted? How are you going to change that, right? And so, because we see a lot of people, we try and make a budget for, or say, okay, now you're going to pay this and use this money to pay that. And then they don't, right? And then they're back right to us asking for Peninsula Daily Home Fund money, like it's their personal bank account. And, I've made a major change at the agency with respect to that. I want the money to go to people who are in crisis, who can self-sustain. Community action agencies focus on self-sufficiency. So what are we doing to incentivize these individuals to become self-sufficient or be able to maintain in a way that's less crisis-oriented in their lives, and then an impact on our community?
I agree with you that many of the laws that we've put into place continue to enable people for not taking on responsibility for their own lives. Are there any plans to implement that getting by in a getting by world through your agency here, or are you looking for partners that might want to do something like that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to have partners that want to, it's a national program. There's workbook, there's already everything in place. It's really just a matter of having some of the funds. I ran the program, on less than $50,000, between materials and food and, paying stipends to the instructors. As soon as I can dig out some money from somewhere, that's what I want to implement. So if there's an organization out there, please contact me. So my email address is cherish@olycap.org, and I'll put that in the chat. And I see somebody has posted, some information there about some of the programs that they have available.
Great.
Thank you, Cherish.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
Yes. Jim Stauffer, Sequim School Board. I'm the legislative rep, and then my other hat, I'm on the Sequim Chamber of Commerce. So I posted it in chat, the recent report from her name's Marin Packer. She is our new what's called community outreach coordinator, and she came to us from Boise, Idaho, where she was the Southwest Idaho coordinator for basically the same job description. So very fortunate. And her husband just got hired for Port Angeles School District as a PE teacher, and they just closed on a house. So all the stars and moon are all lining up, but she is just jumping right into this. And I know she's in the report there, shows all the connections that she's conducting, all the outreach. She's McKinney-Vento, tracking our kids, our couch surfers, as that is a huge kind of the problem, our situation. Our 5-year graduation kids, and I'll just say I think I see some good things happening here, because having that one voice, and she's very experienced in this, and she's probably reached out to several on here. I know, like with the food bank, and I'm looking through the list of attendees here. So that's basically all I have, unless there's any questions for me. So thanks, Colleen.
Great, thank you. So if no one has any further questions, I see we are after 9 o'clock. And I just want to share my perspective, and that is that I think we're really blessed to have Cherish at the helm of Oly Cap. This was a period of extreme stress and need for a community action program in our 2 counties. And she has just taken things up, not just one notch, but many notches. So thank you very much. I've enjoyed working with Cherish, a real professional. And and she did put her email address in the chat, and she's great at getting back with people. So a real go-getter. So thank you, Cherish, for all you do and waking up early for us. We really appreciate it.
This is my pleasure. And thanks so much for having me and having this format for people to learn about